Who is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders' next head coach after the Silver and Black decided to move on from Pete Carroll after 1 year? My name is Mitchell Renz. Y'all are watching the Raiders Reporting. Coming up here on today's show, I'm going to give you the top Raiders head coach candidates for the year of 2026. News broke this morning that the Silver and Black were going to be moving on from Pete. I think you knew it. I think I knew it. I think we all knew it deep down that this move not only was going to happen, but this move needed to happen. Now, I've done a lot of videos already in the past about ranking my top Raiders head coach candidates once Pete ends up getting fired. I knew Pete was going to get fired over a month ago. If you want to go check out a rankings video, you can see it. You're not going to see a rankings video today. Essentially, what you are going to see on the program is me breaking down these head coach candidates. I'm going to start on offense, and then I'm going to go to the defensive side of the football. If you're like, well, what do you mean by that? Offensive-minded head coaches, defensive-minded head coaches. At least, I'm pretty sure that's how it's ended up scripted here. So, because we're going to be looking at all these guys, I will say that there are certain names that you're going to see that have not been confirmed yet. Every name that you see on this show is not me saying that the Raiders are 100% going to interview them. What the names are names that if I was with John Spytek, and if I was with Tom Brady, and if I had the ability to make the decision of who I'm going to request to interview, I would request to interview these names coming up here on the show. If you're excited, though, for the future of the Raiders, I personally believe that the Raiders head coaching job is the best opening out there right now. I don't think there's another opening out there that's better. You could tell me the Cardinals is better, not going to believe you. The Titans, get the F out of here. The Browns, please, don't want to hear it. The Raiders job is the best job out there as it stands right now because we have the number 1 overall pick, because you have the salary cap space, and we do have a lot of draft capital, and I do think we have a lot of solid pillared players. So what we're going to end up doing here is this. With Pete Carroll being fired, it's time to look at some of these new candidates. First half, offensive. Second half is going to be defensive. And I'm not the one that built this show. I've obviously been live all day today, 11 hours and 11 minutes. Surprise candidates makes me nervous because Chugs threw in some surprise candidates. So it's going to be really interesting to see what we have. The first name that we're going to talk about here today is Kevin Stefanski. Not because I am overly interested in Stefanski. I think it is going to be a name that gets thrown out there because, like I said last year with Mike Vrabel, I do believe Mike Vrabel was a top 32 coach on the entire planet. I also think Kevin Stefanski deserves to be in that conversation. A 2-time NFL Coach of the Year with the Browns, I believe, in 2019 and 2023. To me, though, the reason why I'm going to mention Stefanski is because if Stefanski was on board for the Deshaun Watson trade, I am not interested in Stefanski being the next Raiders head coach. Let's go to another coach that was fired. It's Raheem Morris out as the Falcons. Don't think that this makes a lot of sense from a Raiders head coaching standpoint, but if you wanted to bring him in for an interview to be your next offensive coordinator, some coaches are good coaches in terms of coordinators. Some guys are built to be a head coach. Raheem Morris is a good DC, not a head coach I'm interested in, though. The Cardinals, they decided to move on from Jonathan Gannon. He's a smart defensive mind. He's got some interesting ties as well. This would be another name that I at least throw out there as saying I'm not interested as a head coach, but I do think could make some sense for the Raiders if you wanted to bring him in on the defensive side of the football. Other possible firings that could end up going down. Will Baltimore decide to stick with John Harbaugh? There's been a lot of speculation around him. Todd Bowles, Aaron Glenn. I wanted to bring these up to you because I stated at the beginning of this show that the Raiders head coaching job is the best head coaching job out there. And if those jobs become open, well then that might not necessarily be the case. I'm going to say yes here. My question to you is, do you think that the Raiders head coaching job is the best opening? Give me a yes. Give me a no. I'm obviously going to sit up here and say yes. After this YouTube ad break, we are going to get into who I believe is the top offensive-minded head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's go in here to the first candidate. It's Klint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. Currently the OC, and he was with the Minnesota Vikings in 2021, was with the Saints in 2024. Also son of former Super Bowl winning head coach Gary Kubiak. Only 38 years old, has Shanahan ties. The reason why Raiders fans should be fired up about Kubiak is because look at the talent that we have. If you were to go out and get a Fernando Mendoza, you would want to put him in a Klint Kubiak-style offense. Look at how Seattle runs. I know Sam Darnold's doing a great job. He protects the football. He's a run-first offense. And with Ashton Genty, with Brock Bowers, with the young talent we have, and with a lot of money to be able to build an offensive line, Klint Kubiak should be the number one target from an offensive mind you should consider. But Pete Carroll's old, 74. You want to go young? Let's look at Grant Udinski, currently the youngest offensive coordinator in the NFL, and if he were to be hired, he would be the youngest head coach in NFL history. I think he's done a lot of good for Jacksonville, coming from the Liam Cohen tree, but also Udinski, Liam Cohen, John Spytek. There is going to be some serious connections there. Was previously with Minnesota and Carolina. He has never called plays before. However, he's known for being an up-and-coming young offensive-minded head coach. Very highly regarded in NFL circles, and I would look at the way Trevor Lawrence has looked this season. Liam Cohen deserves a lot of credit. Grant Udinski deserves a lot of credit. The way that we talk about Shanahan tree, the way that we talk about McVay tree, I wonder if we're going to start mentioning the Liam Cohen tree. Let's go to another offensive-minded coach here. It's going to be Joe Brady. Been the Bills OC since 2024, an intern in 2023. 36 years old, and Josh Allen once said that Brady has been awesome for my career. Was the former Panthers OC for 2 seasons, was the pass game coordinator with Joe Burrow and the greatest college offense, the greatest college team, I think, that has ever stepped foot on a field. Brady does make me a little nervous because I do wonder if, could this be your Josh McDaniels hire in terms of some guys are built to be coordinators, some guys are built to be head coaches. To me, if you brought in Joe Brady, I actually think that you also would need to bring in somebody along the lines of a Brian Daboll, because Brady and Daboll do have overlap for a quarterback development. Brady makes me nervous, but we're going to mention him here. Let's go to another candidate, Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator of the Rams. Now, even though the picture here of LaFleur, he doesn't look too thrilled to be on the show, I want Raider fans to be hyped up about him. He was the Rams OC since 2023. He was with the New York Jets from 2021 to 2022. He didn't do a very good job there, but he does have a lot of ties to Robert Saleh. I don't personally think that LaFleur would leave the Rams OC job to become our OC, but I do wonder if Robert Saleh was hired, because when Saleh was with the Jets, he hired Mike LaFleur to call plays over there. He doesn't call plays right now with the Rams. He's working underneath Sean McVay. If LaFleur actually wanted the opportunity to call plays, could be an option. Again, I don't think it ends up happening, but he comes from the Shanahan tree, comes from the Sean McVay tree, 38 years old, has been coaching college football in the NFL since 2009. Still a little bit of a risky hire, but I'm willing to take a gamble on anybody from the Sean McVay tree. It just always seems to work out. Let's go to another offensive coach here, Wes Phillips, currently the OC for the Minnesota Vikings, has been the OC since 2022, and if they were to go out, and there's been a lot of rumors about Brian Flores, I do also wonder if they've been at least looking at somebody along the lines of Wes Phillips. Rams, Commanders, Cowboys has done a good job. Son of coaching legend Wade Phillips, who actually is good friends with Mark Davis. I've actually had some conversations with Wade. Was suspended in 2024 for a DUI, which I think it's funny that Chugs threw that note in there. Obviously, the Raiders have had a lot of DUI issues with some past players. But to me, out of so far all the names that you've seen, probably would say Wes Phillips would be a little bit lower on my list. Let's go to another offensive coach here from the Buccaneers, Josh Grizzard. Anytime you have somebody from Tampa Bay, you're going to connect the dots with Spytek. Another candidate that I did not have in my top 10 list, but he's been the Bucs OC this past season. Pass game coordinator in 2024. Played safety at Yale, and if you go to Yale, you got to be a pretty smart guy. I actually probably watched him actually play in a football game because my cousin was the quarterback for Lafayette, and we went to Yale. It was an awful stadium. Crazy. But worked for the Dolphins from 2017 to 2023. The reason why I think that note is very important is because the Raiders are already looking at Brian Flores. Brian Flores was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins in 2019. Maybe there's a little bit of overlap there. Also, Spytek connections. Maybe he's going to connect a little bit with Tom Brady. Again, not a top 10 candidate for me, but somebody that needs to be mentioned. Another offensive coach here, Matt Nagy. I want to be extremely clear. I have absolutely, positively no interest in Matt Nagy at all, and I mean at all, to be the Raiders head coach. Some of these names I did not put on the show. Again, Chugs is the one that made them, probably sprinkled a few of his surprises. Nagy has done a good job as being an OC, and I know that he's done a good job. However, though, I also think it's a lot easier to look good when you are working with Mahomes. When he was the head coach of the Bears, the number one thing I remember our Bears guy saying was, he just does the same thing over and over and over again. I don't want any part of Matt Nagy. Let's go to somebody that I am interested in, somebody who was in my top 10 head coach candidates list video. It is Mike McCarthy, former head coach of the Cowboys. And to me, my Mike Vrabel argument that I gave last season is the exact argument I'm going to give here for Mike McCarthy. There aren't 32 people on the planet better at being a head coach in the NFL than McCarthy. He's got a solid NFL head coaching record, won a Super Bowl back in 45, won Super Bowl 45. He's a good offensive mind with a lot of experience. And if you are looking for somebody that I do think would be able to build this the right way, was handicapped with Jerry Jones, Mike McCarthy could be an interesting guy. But again, I want somebody young, innovative. So let's go to another name here, Brian Daboll, former head coach of the Giants. His name was linked to the Raiders. I'm not interested in Daboll as being a head coach, but I am interested in him being the offensive coordinator, and he did wonders for Josh Allen's career. It was rumored that he'd be interested in the Penn State job before they went out, and they hired Campbell from Iowa State. Y'all know how much I follow Penn State. Y'all know that I'm a big Campbell guy as well. I love what he was able to do at Iowa State. But to me, if you bring in a guy like Daboll, you should be excited about that because of what he's been able to do with his limited sample size from a quarterback standpoint. Daboll's a good coach, but I want to be clear. I only am interested in Daboll as an offensive coordinator. Nothing more. Nothing more. OC for Daboll. Coming up next here, though, we're going to talk about some of these defensive-minded head coach candidates for the Raiders because as it stands right now, I'm recording this video on Monday, January 5th. The only 3 names that have been confirmed to me that the Raiders are interested, all 3 have defensive mind. You can take that information with what you want, but to me, and it makes me wonder, are we interested in defensive-minded head coaches? We're going to talk about who those 3 coaches are and many more names in just a moment. Before we get into it, though, today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks. It's easy, it's exciting, daily fantasy sports made easy. And on Prize Picks, how you play, it's up to you. But in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend, elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops, and Prize Picks lets you take control. Find your community on Prize Picks with a new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends, copy lineups from winners in a single click, copy lineups you like, or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us, tailor-fade our picks with just one click. Do you miss fantasy football? Prize Picks lets you play fantasy football every week. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players' stats, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Join millions of users. Sign up for America's #1 fantasy sports app. Download the Prize Picks app today. Make sure that you use code CLNS to be able to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Let's go to the number 1 name that I have been hearing, and if you were to ask me, who do I believe is the front runner for the Raiders job, I am going to say Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. And he has worked with Jim and John Harbaugh since 2017. Very, very important for Mark Davis, who loves the Harbaugh family because there's overlap with Al in there. Michigan defensive coordinator from 2022 and 2023, where they won a national championship. I don't know if y'all remember what Spytek was saying. Him and Brady are leading the charge. Spytek and Brady were teammates at Michigan. They think very similar to what the Michigan way is. And Minter's a Michigan guy. Lots and lots of ties, only 42 years old. It was reported by Jordan Schultz that there was already a lot of interest in Minter. I am going to tell you right now, if I was a betting man, the number 1 name I would put my money on is that guy right there. Minter's got to be looked at very, very seriously. To me, though, the top 2 defensive-minded coaches that I would want the Raiders to hire, either Jesse Minter or, here we go, Chris Shula, defensive coordinator of the Rams. He's been the DC the past 2 seasons, took over for Raheem Morris, but he's worked underneath Sean McVay since 2017. grandson of coaching legend Don Shula, the 72 Dolphins. Maybe you remember him, John Scheffler. 39 years old, and he's been coaching in college football and the NFL since 2010. There are certain people around the NFL that regard, if you're looking for the next Sean McVay, a lot of people point the finger to Chris Shula. He's very well liked. He's very well respected. And I know that the offense for the Rams gets a lot of attention with Matthew Stafford. Look at how much money the Rams spent this past year. Second least amount of money. Second cheapest defense in the NFL. And they're one of the best defensive units. When I look at this Raiders team, I go, we got a lot of holes to fill. We might not be able to invest a lot of money in the defense because I think it's important to invest a lot of money to build around Bowers, Genti, Fernando Mendoza. If you want to find a head coach that's been able to show you that he can work with maybe not having a lot, Chris Shula is a great name to keep in mind. Let's go to another defensive coordinator, somebody that has been confirmed to get interest. So far, the only names, Minter, Brian Flores. I'll tell you the other name coming up here in just a second. But he's been the Vikings defensive coordinator since 2023, was the Dolphins head coach from 2019 to 2021, and also a Patriots assistant and coach from 2008 and 2018. So there is some Tom Brady overlap. I was saying a few years ago, it might be last year, 2 years ago, I've done so many head coach videos, I don't even remember it anymore, but there was speculation that Flores and Brady did not get along. If you've ever heard the story about Stephen Ross, Tom Brady, and Brian Flores on a yacht, if you haven't, I encourage you to Google it. You're going to be able to get way more information on it. Based on who I talked to, Brian Flores and Tom Brady are good to go. I do wonder if they could bring in maybe Josh McCown to be the OC. He's got a little bit of a Sean McVay tree in him, pass game coordinator, or quarterbacks coach, for Minnesota. So they could be, bring him on over. But to me, I always hear Raiders fans say, I want to see the old school Raiders. I want to see the team that punches people in the mouth. Can't literally punch people in the mouth in today's day and age in football. But if you want somebody that is going to bring the heat, is going to bring the blitz, if you don't like Patrick Graham's bend but don't break defense, here's the opposite of it. This is I'm going to try to make you bend, and I'm going to try to break you, and I'm going to blitz until you can't freaking breathe anymore. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But what's really important is being able to generate pressure. I like this style of defense, and I'm a big, big fan of Brian Flores. Let's go to another defensive coordinator here. He was in my top 10 video. I'll be real. He was number 10 on that show. It's Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator of the Packers, and he's been there the past 2 seasons. Boston College head coach from 2020 to 2023. I got a family member who played college football at Boston College, not at the same time Hafley was there, but knows a lot of people inside of that organization and has said nothing but good things about him. 46 years old, has been coaching in college and the NFL since 2001, but this is an interesting name. Again, I don't think he ends up being the Raiders head coach. I don't think he would end up being our DC. There's rumors that, hell, he could get promoted. I don't think it's going to happen, but a lot of good relationships between Robert Saleh and Jeff Hafley. Let's go to defensive coordinator here for the Chiefs, Steve Spagnuolo. I want to be very clear. I am not interested in Spagnuolo at all. Can I be clear on that? I am not interested. He is a good defensive coach. That's what he is. He's not a head coach. If you're the Raiders and you go out and you hire Steve Spagnuolo, I might just snap my headset live here on this program. He was the Giants intern. He was the Rams head coach. Look at the record there. It ain't great. 5-time Super Bowl champ as a DC. Congratulations, Steve Spagnuolo. I'm not interested in you, though. So who's going to be the next Raiders head coach? There's got to be some names. You got to be thinking out there, who could it be? Now, I don't know if that's all the names that are on this show. I was going to say, there's got to be some more names because there's definitely one name that we haven't talked about that needs to be on here. So I want to know. Go down in the comments section. If I'm going to call myself the voice of the nation, this is your opportunity to get your voice heard. Who will be the next Raiders head coach? I got to see your answers down below. Again, to me, I'm going to guess it's Jesse Minter, but that's only because it's been the name that I have continuously heard, and it's going to be the name that I will put my hat on and say, that's the guy that I've heard. And when I hear it as much as I hear it, I'm just going to say it's Minter. We're going to see, though. It's going to be fun. Let's go to another name here that it could potentially be. Maybe it's Mike Tomlin. There's been a lot of speculation around Pittsburgh moving on from Tomlin. I'll admit, I don't think it's nearly as likely now that the Steelers made the playoffs. But if you're in Pittsburgh, if you've heard any of the rumors around there, Steelers fans are sick and tired of going to the playoffs and not winning anything. And he's been there since 2007, has never had a losing season. I would love 19 straight years of never having a losing season. Sometimes coaches need a change of scenery, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Andy Reid, where Reid was with Philadelphia. The time came, time to go. Then he ends up being able to go to, the Kansas City Chiefs, right? But for Tomlin, I do think Tomlin could be a very similar situation because I do not believe that there are 32 coaches out there better than Mike Tomlin. He is a culture changer. I have the utmost respect for him. Growing up in central Pennsylvania, shout out to the 570. I got a lot of respect for Tomlin. But, again, going to be an interesting one. This is not a defensive-minded head coach. It's an offensive-minded head coach. Mike McDaniel, who is still currently employed by the Miami Dolphins, and he's been on the hot seat all season long. Kyle Shanahan guy, I think if you were to hire McDaniel, it would be more of an offensive coordinator. I don't think that he would get a head coaching gig, but I actually think that him as an OC should really fire. You got to get Robert Saleh. Should really fire you up because the Raiders are going to run a run-first offense. And McDaniel comes from the Shanahan tree where they run the football a lot. Also, in Miami, look at what they were able to do with Devon Achane. Really implemented and used him well. If you're the Raiders, if you're going to be the new offensive coordinator of this team or whoever the hell's calling plays, your offense better be around getting Ashton Genty involved as much as humanly possible, building a freaking beautiful offensive line so he can actually run, getting your 2 tight ends involved, using Jack Besh and Trey Tucker, maybe add another talented player in the mix there, but you need to take pressure off of your young quarterback in Fernando Mendoza by being able to hand it off and knowing that we can actually pick up yards behind an offensive line. I do want to mention one more name on the show. If we don't have the graphic, it's totally fine. It's going to be Robert Saleh. And the 3 names that have been confirmed to me by sources, Jesse Minter, Brian Flores, and Robert Saleh. Now, I have heard this name a lot more over the past, again, this card was made as a week. I've heard his name a lot more over the past 2 to 3 weeks. And Saleh was somebody that turned down the job last year. But if you were following with my live show today, you'll know that Saleh just hired a brand new agent. So because Saleh hired a brand new agent, that's something that needs to be thought about. Because usually when a guy hires a new agent, he's signed with Wasserman, that means that things are in motion. Saleh is a good head coach. I want to be clear. He's a good defensive-minded head coach. I think he got the raw end of the deal with the New York Jets, if I'm being just quite frank with you. If the Raiders were to go out and get Saleh, I would still want to see what that plan looks like overall from top to bottom. But I do want to say Robert Saleh is another name that we got to be able to keep here in mind. So as it stands right now, those are some of the Raiders head coach candidates. There's probably going to end up being other names that get thrown out there just through the course of the season, just through the course of the entire offseason. Like, you probably might hear some rumors around Broncos defense coordinator Vance Joseph. Not really interested in him. Colts DC Lou Anarumo. I think he's a good coach. Probably built a little bit more just to be a DC. Jaguars DC Anthony Camp. Not really interested in him. We got Broncos quarterbacks coach Davis Webb. Just these are a list of names that were reported out there. Commanders offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury is somebody that I don't really, we'll get to that. We don't really think, I personally don't see being hired. That's because the way that it ended up going down, it rubbed Mark a little bit of the wrong way. But we know this. Vegas knows certain things, right? Vegas has odds. They put out odds. Right now, the coach with the highest odds to be the next Raiders head coach is Brian Flores. Then it's Klint Kubiak. If I was going to go put my money anywhere, it would be on Jesse Minter. Phillip Rivers is kind of an LOL, but I think it's just because Rivers said the other day that he's like, I think I could be a head coach here. This is them just trying to steal your money. If I was a betting man, and if I were to put my money, like Bill Belichick, get out of here, no chance. If I was a betting man, I'll put my money over here on Jesse Minter. I don't even see Robert Saleh on that list, which I find to be interesting. But to me, Vegas hears things. And if I've heard 2 names, Flores, Minter. Kubiak's interesting because he's an offensive coach. Minter, Kubiak, Flores. and Chris Shula are the top candidates that I want the Raiders to hire. And if John Spytek and Tom Brady are leading the way, well, I have a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to get this thing going in the right direction. As always, if you don't know, you can hit me up on IG. You can hit me up on Twitter. Yes, I make content every single day here on the Raiders Report, but I also do my best to make even more content on social media. If you never want to miss anything from me or the Raiders Report, hit me up over there.